Hey, Scott from aristacob.com here. I have been shooting almost daily videos with aristagrub.com for the Aristagrub channel. So almost daily I've been saying Scott from aristagrub.com. So it's now becoming habitual. Hey, Scott from aristacob.com here.
Seth from shrinkingpastor.com.
And together, the three of us, we're Markwood Men's Breakfast Club. Welcome back once again. Good morning. Good morning, boy.
Good morning, Homer.
We're a little stacked up here on the table, so there may be some wiggling and jiggling that's not intentional. It's just going to happen.
Mostly in this region here.
Nothing to do with that. Oh, this is actually a very exciting episode, and it's a prequel to a very exciting episode next week.
Okay.
Now, what could that possibly be? Well, this week we're going to smoke, this will shock you, some Lane 1Q.
No way.
Yeah. This is Lane 1Q that was beaten around in my van. In fact, I just had it inside of this container and had a moist paper towel stretched over that to rehydrate it. I tend to smoke 1Q a little bit dry. And this was a bit drier than normal, so went ahead and gave it about 10 minutes of rehydration, and it seems to be perfect now. But we're going to smoke this as kind of our, what would you call that?
This is the...
It's a bench stone. It's a
benchmark.
A benchmark?
Is what they call it, but this is the... you had to ask the question. This is the control.
That's it. Because what we're going to do next week, and here, why don't you help me lift this up a little bit? Ready? Next week, we're going to crack into my now 5-year-old cellaring of Lane 1Q. So we want to make sure that we've got that a baseline, a fresh taste in our mouths, so we know exactly what Lane 1Q tastes like. I know what it tastes like, but we're going to make sure that Boy also knows what it tastes like. We will record next week's episode immediately after this one, since I'm traveling, and
Me too.
It'll make life easier for both of us. So we're going to smoke this in some unsmoked Morgan nose warmers, and that has pluses and minuses. But you know, who knows what we've been smoking in our other assortments that we have laying around here, and we just don't want to taint the flavor with other tobacco.
Sure.
All right. So start this.
Now, I'm interested in this experiment because I saw in the comments not long ago when we talked about this, when we were putting together the 5-pound jar of Lane 1Q and mentioned cellaring it, that some people commented that there really isn't much of a point in cellaring aromatic tobacco. And so we're going to find that out, right?
Well, we're going to find out a couple things. The first thing is, 5 years ago, there was so much up in the air as far as taxation on tobacco. They had just raised the taxes on the roll-your-own tobaccos because they had been rebranding, or no, actually, they were in the process of rebranding and calling them tobacco. But these little roll-your-own cigarette places were popping up, and we knew that the taxes were soon to be shooting to the roof here in the USA. And also, the cost of tobacco is never going to come down. So I figure to hedge against inflation, I would go ahead and cellar 5 pounds of Lane 1Q, since I'm going to be smoking Lane 1Q. Fortunately, the cost of Lane 1Q has not gone through the roof. And so, you know, I'm a little ahead of my time. It's still going to happen someday.
So is the intention to crack these open and see? Or is the intention to crack one open and leave the rest for another year, another 5 years, 10?
Yeah, we're going to crack one open, see how it...
Have a Lane 1Q birthday.
See how it behaved. And so to your point, yes, most people know that English blends and just straight tobaccos, like wine, they age, well, like red wine. They age and kind of mellow out over time. They say that aromatic tobaccos will lose some of their aromatics and that they will not get better, smoother, more mellow.
Okay.
You know, these were sealed. They better not have lost a whole lot of flavor.
Chris from the Rose on the grave.
Chris?
Yeah, you heard me. He was there, actually, at the gravesite with Seal. It was Seal, Batman, and Chris.
Who's Chris?
I don't know. You have to have Seal that, I guess.
They were sealed. Oh, gosh.
So you're not doing this 5-year-old 1Q any favors, because this is not as hydrated as I would have hoped. It's a bit dry.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
It's less dry than I usually smoke it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how it compares if the 1Q in the jar has dried up to a comparable state.
So all of these have the number 7 written on them, except for 2. One of them has the number 6, and that was for the number of ounces that were packaged into them. And one of them has no markings on it at all. And I think that this was the tail end of it. And I think this is one that you cracked into. Is that right?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Boy was having a 1Q emergency, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And he needed some 1Q, and I said,
I've got some up in the closet. Okay, here we go. Crack one open. Smoke's all right.
I haven't smoked any of this, so I didn't cheat on 5 years.
So this is interesting, an interesting experiment. And I've been dabbling in a few things that I think relate in a experimental kind of way. So around Christmas time, I've talked about it once or twice. My wife got me a 1-gallon beer brewing kit. I've only done 1.5 now brews, but it's a fascinating process of just the idea that you're taking living organisms and letting them die and fart and burp and you're gonna
eat your sugar.
Eat your sugar. That's right, and then you're gonna enjoy the byproduct of that. It's so bizarre, And
I've never understood the enjoying part.
Right, but I mean, people. It's no different from bread that has a similar process. You have the yeast and let it do its work, and so recently I decided to jump down another path of fermentation, just as an experiment, because it's a very low barrier for entry. And that's I have. Am a week into fermenting my first batch of kombucha. Now,
God bless you.
Yeah. If you don't know, kombucha is they say, it's a very old style of fermented tea. And what you do is you take basically sweet tea, you take black tea and add sugar and put it into a container with a mixture of yeast and acetobacters. The acetobacters are bacteria that eat the byproduct from the yeast and from sugar, and they convert it into glucose. And I know more about them than I would have if I didn't work in an industry that deals with them. A lot of times restaurants that think that they have a grease problem are actually dealing with acetobacters and the glucose that they create, because it ends up looking like grease. The byproduct kind of looks like grease and ends up clogging up sewers. And so they think they have a grease problem when the reality is they probably don't. But anyway.
So they're making tea? You didn't even know it?
So in the tea is what I'm making. The glucose is what they're making, while the sugars are eating. While the acetobacters are eating whatever is in the pipes. The byproduct of the acetobacters is acetic acid, which is essentially vinegar. And so, what ends up happening with this tea? You put in some tea from a previous batch, a mother batch, and it ends up the yeast and bacteria end up creating a layer of glucose, and it looks nasty. It looks like someone just took a jar of lard, turned it on its side, and cut a slice and just put it on top of the tea. Kind of looks like that, except it's not lard, it's sugar, essentially. And so they take this tea and they lightly ferment it, and it becomes acidic, a bit like vinegar. And so imagine a sweet vinegar tea, and it sounds so unappealing.
Have you had this?
Yeah, I've had about a shot glass worth, but it was delicious. It was really, really good.
Sweet vinegar.
Yeah, so what you end up doing is you take the tea after the first fermentation. I use the word fermentation, but it's not creating an alcohol. There is some alcohol because it's yeast, but it's less than 1% by volume. It's I think typically considered a non-alcoholic drink. And so, yeah, what you do after the first fermentation is you bottle it, and you bottle it with fruit juice or fruit pieces, and it will continue to eat the fruit, and it continues to eat the sugar. And what will end up happening is the tea will become carbonated, and it will become infused with the flavor of that fruit. And so a lot of people will create mango or cherry flavors, and it ends up being a carbonated, a fizzy, sweet tea with a little bit of tart. It's very difficult to describe. The one that I had was the guy who made cherry. But it's so easy and ultimately so inexpensive. For me, I got started for about $25. And that was the cost of a mason jar. I got a 1-gallon mason jar. And the cost of what is typically known as a SCOBY. We've learned since that the SCOBY stands for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. And a SCOBY is really just what's living inside of the tea.
So that's like the mother in vinegar.
It's like yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And so you make a batch of tea, you add some sugar, you add in some tea from a previous batch, and this it's called a pellicle. I don't know how to pronounce it. Pellicle. Pellicle. But that's the piece that's like a floating disc that looks like lard.
Probably peckle.
Yeah, you add the peckle in, and then that's it. And what you can do is you always want to leave a little bit of the kombucha out in the jar when you're bottling, and you just add more sweet tea to it, and it is a constant. You can create a ever-growing colony, an ever-growing and fermenting batch.
How long does that take to get the next batch ready to consume?
So it's as simple. So it's a week. It's a week from putting the tea in to when it's ready to be bottled, and then bottling is 2 to 3 days, and then you put it in the fridge. And putting it in the fridge kind of kills all of the yeast, and it stops the secondary fermentation process, the carbonation process. And so by that time, you only have another week left until the next batch.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting. Let's go ahead and try it. Where is it?
Yeah. So I don't have it. I'm still on it. I will be bottling it this evening. But we were talking a bit before the show, and brought to mind word to the wise. If you're going to get into a new hobby, do a lot of research before you spend money on equipment. As I said, it only costs about $25, which is pretty good. I have since learned that you can make your own batch of kombucha for about $10 with essentially the same results that I'll get. One of the things that people recommended, instead of spending $15 on a 1-gallon mason jar, is go to Walmart and buy a 1-gallon pickle jar for $6. You get a 1-gallon glass jar and a gallon's worth of pickles. So that's one thing I've learned, which immediately my mind starts thinking, that's a worthwhile investment. This is one of those things that because it's a live colony, you can continue to grow and make larger batches. The other thing is pop top bottles, the ones that have the wire frame, and are really good for high pressure drinks. I bought some of those at IKEA for like $3.50 a piece.
Oh, the Chinese
not
ones.
long ago. Yeah, that's a good price. That's a good price for those. but I'm a little bit worried about them because their stopper doesn't seem to be rubber. It seems to be like hard plastic. And so I'm afraid that that's going to cause a problem with the carbonation. Doing a little bit of research online, people that bottle kombucha said, go to Aldi, the grocery store. They have a lemonade that is in a glass bottle with a stopper. It's a rubber stopper. The lemonade is $2.35. The lemonade is delicious. It's a sparkling lemonade, so it's under pressure, and you get the bottles. So could have saved myself a lot of money if I had done the research on the front end. But we'll see. In a couple weeks, I'll bring you some, and we'll see how it is.
I used to make root beer and ginger beer, and I used to buy a root beer back in Ohio, and I'm sure it was available other places as well. That used to come in those bottles, and that was far and away the most economical way of getting the bottles. It was cheaper than buying in dozen quantities. It was cheaper than buying bottles. Well, cool. I mean, I really do look forward to seeing this. I'm not a scientist, but I'm a science nerd, and I love the science of cooking and even this idea of brewing. I think it's fascinating. Back to the 1Q for a minute. It's really important, unless you want to have moldy tobacco, that you prep your containers and everything that you're going to be touching the tobacco with, so that you don't introduce any mold. We've seen from some of the major brands of tobacco having issues with the seals breaking, moisture getting in, boom, you got mold. And maybe there were already spores in it to begin with. So we got to be careful when we do that. That was the first thing I looked at as I picked this thing up in my closet today. It's truly the first time I've looked inside of these bottles in 5 years. And my fear was that there would be a layer of fuzz on even one of them, and there doesn't appear to be any. So that part is enough to make me happy. Yeah, I noticed that some of these are depressed, and some of them are not. They were not boiled or anything, so I didn't create a vacuum. You can see in my video what I did was I put these into the dishwasher and ran them on a rinse cycle with hot water. That heated them up, and I mean, they were already clean, and I just wanted to heat them up more than anything else. Before I bottle it up. Well, let's wrap this up, because I want to crack into one of these, and we can continue that discussion when we do that next week. So that's it for now. We won't be drinking any of this next week, because next week we're recording this tomorrow, but later today. In a couple weeks.
Okay. We'll have some, and maybe we'll make a video making it. Maybe I'll give you a colony, and you can, if you like it, you can grow your own.
If I like it, I'll probably want to.
That's the really cool thing about this, because it's a living colony, is all it takes is taking a little bit of existing kombucha and mixing it in with fresh tea, and you can create your own batch.
Do you remember Herman? Are you too young to remember Herman? Probably around the time that you were born, there was this friendship bread that was being passed around from people to people. And you would get from some friend, a jar that had this sourdough starter inside of it. And there would be instructions, and all you have to do is you add, a cup of sugar and 2 cups of flour once a week. And then you separate it in half.
Right.
You add some flour to each, and then you bake the half that you've separated out, or you can give that to somebody else as a gift, along with instructions on how they can take care of Herman.
Right.
And it made a really good bread. I mean, and dessert breads and things like that. But after a while, you get sick and tired of Herman, and your friends don't want any more Herman. So,
but can't you
could freeze
refrigerate
it. You could freeze it.
Dough, and
you could refrigerate it and slow the process down, but you still had to take care of it. And inevitably, what happened was Herman dies. But it gets to be too much.
Similar to this, you can cool it. The biggest thing actually for this is you seal the jar. Normally you leave it so it's breathing. You seal the jar, and that slows the growth. And so you can, every batch that you make, it will make a new pellicule. and you can take that. That has yeast and other bacteria living in it too. So the interesting thing about this is the one rule that doesn't apply. You should wash your hands, but you need to take caution not to wash them with antibacterial soap, because you don't want to be touching this good bacteria you want.
Crazy.
And killing it.
All right, so thanks for watching. Be sure to watch next week for the unveiling, the uncracking, release the Kraken of the 1Q. Thanks for watching.